Many thanks for joining me on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria. The top story says Haley wins GOP primary over Trump in DC. South Korea to suspend doctor licenses amid strike. Australia grants $42 million to ASIN for South China Sea. Haiti imposes curfew after 4,000 inmates flee jail, and Harris urges immediate Gaza ceasefire, rebukes Israel. On United States 2024 election, U.S. presidential candidate Nikki Haley has become the first woman to win a Republican primary following victory in Washington, D.C. Late on Sunday, the ex-ambassador to the United Nations was declared the winner. The victory offers a small increase to her campaign, but Donald Trump, former United States president, holds a vast lead in the race to become the Republican candidate in November's presidential election. Trump's only remaining challenger for the nomination won 62.9% of the vote in the Capitol. The controversial ex-president took 33.2%. The result handed Haley all 19 delegates at stake. Haley campaign spokesperson Olivia Perez-Cuba said in a statement, "It's not surprising that Republicans closest to Washington dysfunction are rejecting Donald Trump and all his chaos." The GOP appears, however, prepared to look past that chaos, which includes numerous legal cases, including efforts to brand Trump ineligible to run in November. Haley faces near impossible odds in her mission to win the Republican nomination to take on likely Democratic nominee President Joe Biden in November. Trump won the first 8 nominating contests by momentous margins and is anticipated to rise his lead in this week's Super Tuesday races, which will see 15 states vote. Despite the small and symbolic victory in D.C., the primaries later this week are thought likely to test the former South Carolina's governor's determination to fight on. Trump's campaign issued a statement shortly after Sunday's vote was declared, sarcastically congratulating her on being named Queen of the Swamp by the lobbyists and D.C. insiders that want to protect the failed status quo. On Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court is anticipated to rule on an earlier decision by the Colorado Supreme Court that disqualified Trump from running for president, referring to the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The Colorado court invoked a Civil War constitutional provision preventing those who engage in insurrection from holding office. That ruling made him ineligible to appear on the Colorado ballot, including for Tuesday's primary vote. On health matters, South Korea has said it will suspend the licenses of trainee doctors who have disregarded an ultimatum to end a strike over government plans to surge medical school admissions. On February 20th, around 9,000 junior doctors walked out, leading to the cancellation of some operations and treatments, as well as obstructing the operation of hospitals' emergency units. Health Minister Cho Yu-hong on Monday said the authorities will visit hospitals to find out whether the doctors have returned to work and take action according to the law and principle without exception. While speaking, he said those who had not returned may experience serious problems in their personal career path. The doctors taking strike action are a fraction of the South Korea's 140,000 doctors, but they account for as many as 40% of the total doctors at some major small hospitals. Numerous took to the streets of Seoul on Sunday at a mass rally organized by the Korean Medical Association, KMA, which represents private practitioners, defying February 29th government deadline for them to return to work or face legal action, including possible arrest. The doctors say the government should first tackle pay and working conditions before trying to increase the number of physicians. Kim Taek-woo of the Korea Medical Association said, according to report, he told the protesters rather that the government is pushing the reforms unilaterally and that the doctors cannot accept under any circumstances. Under South Korean law, doctors are restricted from taking strike action. The government says the step to add the number of students admitted to medical schools by 2,000 from the 2025 academic year is essential because of the rapidly aging population and the country's low number of doctors to patients. At 2.6 doctors per 1,000 people, South Korea's rate is one of the lowest in the developed world. The plan to improve medical school admissions is popular with the public, with about 76% of respondents in favor, regardless of political faction affiliation, according to a recent Gallup Korea poll. President Yoon Suk Yeol has taken a hard line on the strike and has seen his approval ratings climb as the standoff drags on. With legislative elections in April, Yoon's party looking to win back a parliamentary majority, the government is unlikely to compromise quickly, according to analysts. But doctors have also pledged not to back down, saying the government's plan do not address the sector's real problems. We have nowhere to retreat anymore. We will not just sit idly by the government acting undemocratic, Lee Jong-geon, the interim head of the KMA, said at Sunday's protests. Now, Penny Wong, Australia's foreign minister, has announced 64 million Australian dollars, that's 41.8 million US dollars in funding for maritime security on the first day of a special summit with members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in Melbourne. In her address to a forum of maritime cooperation on Monday morning, Wong said, "The countries of our region rely on oceans, seas and rivers for livelihoods and commerce, including free and open sea lanes in the South China Sea." Wong did not specify which countries the funding will go, but welcomed efforts by Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam and the Philippines to delimit their maritime boundaries. Malaysia, the Philippines and Vietnam claim parts of the South China Sea, which China claims almost in its entirety. The special summit hosted in Melbourne marks 50 years since Australia became a dialogue partner of ASEAN, whose members are countries in Southeast Asia, and comes as its members last year held their first ever joint military exercises. The governing centre-left Labour Party has long intended to forge closer relations with the region, recognizing Australia's proximity to the Southeast Asia. But Australia's relationship with its regional neighbours and its interest in the South China Sea are also seen through the lens of Canberra's close ties with the United States and its membership in the Australia, United Kingdom and US Security Pact, known as AUKUS. In her speech, Wong quoted Indonesian President Joko Widodo as saying, "We also have the responsibility to lower the tension, to melt the ice, to create space for dialogue, to bridge the differences in the region." Indonesia, along with Malaysia, is among Australia's allies in the region to have raised fears that Canberra's investing tens of billions of dollars in nuclear submarines is potentially contributing to a nuclear arms race in Southeast Asia and the wider Asia Pacific. Moving now to politics, Haiti's government has declared a state of emergency and a curfew after an explosion of gang-led violence over the weekend saw thousands of prisoners escape after assaults of the country's two biggest prisons. The 72-hour state of emergency went into quick effect as the government said it would set out to fight the killers, kidnappers and other violent criminals it said it had escaped in the attacks. The curfew will be enforced from 6 p.m. until 5 a.m. local time. A statement from the Finance Minister Patrick Boisvert, who is acting as Prime Minister while Ariel Henry is overseas trying to salvage support for United Nations-backed security force to stabilize the country in its conflict with increasingly powerful crime groups, said the police were ordered to use all legal means at their disposal to enforce the curfew and apprehend all offenders. Gangs led by Jimmy Sharizia, a former police officer known as Barbecue, are trying to force Henry from power. Only closely 100 of the National Penitentiary's estimated 3,800 inmates remained inside the assault on Saturday night, Pere Esperance of the National Network of Defense of Human Rights have said. The Haitian government in a statement said police tried to repel the gang attack against that prison and another facility called Croix de Bouquet. Esperance said it was not immediately clear how many inmates escaped from the second prison, which he said held 1,450 inmates. The government said the attacks left several wounded among prison staff and inmates. In a statement, it appreciated the population for their calm despite these very difficult times. Violence in Haiti has surged in recent days after calls from Sharizia for criminal groups to unite and overthrow Henry. Sharizia heads an alliance of gangs and faces sanctions from the United Nations and the United States. On Sunday, one voluntary prison worker said 99 prisoners had opted to remain in their cells in the main jail for fear of being killed in the crossfire. These included numerous retired Colombian soldiers who were jailed for their alleged involvement of the assassination of former President Jovenel Moise. Authorities have cautioned people to be careful and continue to support the National Police, who will do everything possible to track down fleeing prisoners and arrest those responsible for these acts, the statement read. The Prime Minister's precise whereabouts remained unclear on Sunday. Henry had been due to return from a visit to Kenya, where he signed a security deal to tackle gang violence. Closely 15,000 people have been forced to leave their homes in recent days, with 10 sites hosting internally displaced people emptied over the weekend, according to the United Nations International Organization for Migration, IOM. Henry, who became Prime Minister in 2021 after Moise's assassination, was supposed to step down by early February, but told a regional summit in Guyana before traveling to Kenya that he will only hold elections by August 2025 once the situation was more stable. The last elections took place in 2016. On Israel-Gaza conflict, Kamala Harris, United States Vice President, has called for an immediate pause in fighting in Gaza while issuing a sporadic rebuke of Israel. Given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire for at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table, Harris said on Sunday. These will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in. In some of the sturdiest condemnation of Israel yet by the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden, Harris said Israel must do more to let the delivery of aid, including opening new border crossings and committing not to impose unnecessary restrictions. Harris said during a speech to mark the violent suppression of civil rights protesters by police in Selma, Alabama on March 7, 1965, that people in Gaza are starving, the conditions are inhumane, and our common humanity compels us to act. The Israeli government must do more to significantly increase the flow of aid. No excuses, according to her. Harris also addressed Thursday's incident during which over 100 Palestinians were killed as they tried to access food aid in Gaza City, saying that too many innocent Palestinians have lost their lives. Harris also challenged Hamas to accept the terms of a ceasefire deal that U.S. officials say has been broadly accepted by Israel. Harris' comments come as Biden is facing increasing pressure from left-leaning voters over his support for Israel ahead of November's presidential election. Democrats are progressively concerned that Biden's stance on the war could cost him votes, especially in Michigan, one of a handful of battleground states expected to decide the outcome of the election. In Michigan last week, during the Democratic primary, over 100,000 voters cast a vote for uncommitted in a rebuke of the president's position in Gaza. Biden won Michigan, which has one of the largest Muslim populations in the country, but only about 150,000 votes in 2020. Former President Donald Trump carried Michigan by fewer than 11,000 votes in 2016, becoming the first Republican to win the Midwestern state since 1988. Moving now to more stories. Villages fall as Russia reveals Ukraine's weak defenses. A series of sudden Russian advances have challenged Ukraine's new line of defense set up after the withdrawal from the major town of Avdiivka and arising concerns about Kyiv's tactics and momentum on the front lines. On February 17th, Ukraine announced a withdrawal from Avdiivka to a series of positions to the town's west, yet 3 tiny villages have since fallen to Russian forces, with Kyiv insisting they never planned to defend them. But the defensive line it declared will fall back to 3 villages further to the west has since come under heavy Russian assault, with pro-Russian sources claiming Moscow has partially occupied all 3 settlements. Ukraine denies the claims. The Russian advances come in the face of a deep catastrophe in munitions for the Ukrainian military, establishing a near existential debate for frontline troops who must ration ammunition, questioning how long they can withstand Russian pressure. In another sign of the rising sense of discomfort, the new commander of the Ukrainian military Colonel General Alexander Sirski twice in the past week rebuked his subordinate officers for poor performance on the ski front line. Sirski criticized on Thursday certain shortcomings and miscalculations by commanders of the Avdiivka front lines, which directly affected the sustainability of defense in certain areas. He returned to the theme of inadequate staffing on Sunday, suggesting he had replaced some officers who were not aware of the situation and directly endanger the lives and health of their subordinates. 3 weeks ago, Sirski became the military's new commander after his widely popular predecessor, Valery Zaluzhny, was replaced following months of tension with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Sirski has inherited a battlefield where a resurgent Russia and brutal ferocity has exploited long telegraphed shortcomings in Western aid, ammunition and personnel for Ukraine. Now in China, Xi tightens grip as China scraps tradition amidst economic woes. Several delegates from across China are assembling in Beijing this week for the beginning of the country's most prominent yearly political event, where leaders will signal how they plan to stir the world's second largest economy in the year ahead and try to dispel growing concern about the challenges it faces. Projecting confidence is expected to be high on the agenda for Chinese leader Xi Jinping and his top Communist Party officials during the days-long, highly choreographed event known as the Two Sessions, when China's rubber-stamped legislature and top advisory body convene. The largely ceremonial gathering is taking on an intensified importance this year as China's economy has been shaken by a property sector crunch, hefty local government debt, deflation, a stock market rout, and tech friction, with the US all fueling questions about whether the country will lose steam before it reaches its goal of becoming a developed global power. It also will include a major break with precedent, the scrapping of a closing press conference with China's premier, a political tradition that has featured in the gathering for 3 decades, at times providing a rare window into thinking of China's number 2 leader, who is nominally in charge of the economy. The press conference will also not take place for the rest of the present 5-year political cycle, unless there are very special circumstances, spokesperson Lu Qinjiang said, according to reports in Beijing on Monday, ahead of the legislative meeting's opening day, citing other interview opportunities for media throughout the event. This year's legislative gathering will also last just 7 days, a shorter format than was typically prior to the pandemic. The changes are likely to add to broader fears about transparency around China's policy making and further dim the premier's profile, which had already been impacted by Xi Jinping's hardline control over all policy areas, including the economy. Under Xi, the premier and the State Council, which functions as China's cabinet, have been increasingly sidelined. Alfred Wu, an associate professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, said, according to report, by design, they only want one voice from the Communist Party. They don't want other voices to dilute the voice of the party, which is controlled by Xi Jinping. That also means Xi is heavily under the spotlight as economic pain has triggered rising frustration within China. The gathering comes 1 year after he began a norm-shattering third term as a president, having consolidated power atop the party and stacked its leadership with a raft of officials who appeared to be selected for their loyalty as much as experience. A year later, as expected, post-COVID recovery has yet to fully materialize. Young people struggle to find jobs, investors grapple with market losses, and small business owners fight to stay afloat. Skepticism has been rising about the direction charted by the leader and his new team. Xi Jinping has also overseen a political shake-up in his own ranks, further marring the start of a new term. Coming to the African shores, closely 170 dead in Burkina Faso attacks, says official. In northern Burkina Faso a week ago, around 170 people were killed in attacks on 3 villages, a regional prosecutor has said, as violence flares in the country. We received reports of the attacks on the villages of Komsilga, Nordin and Sori in Yatanga province on February 25th, with a provisional toll of around 170 people executed Alai Benjamin Kulabali said in a statement on Sunday. The attacks left numerous others injured and caused material damage, the prosecutor of the northern town of Wahegoya said, without apportioning blame to any group. He said his office ordered an investigation and appealed to the public for more information. Survivors of the attacks said, according to reports, that dozens of women and young children were among the victims. Local security sources said the attacks were separate from deadly incidents that happened on the same day at a mosque in the rural community of Natia Boani in eastern Burkina Faso and a church in the northern village of Askani. Authorities have yet to release an official death toll for those attacks, but a senior church official said at the time that at least 15 civilians were killed in the Natia Boani attack. Roughly half of Burkina Faso is outside government control as armed groups have ravaged the country for years. The violence has killed nearly 20,000 people and displaced over 2 million in one of the world's poorest countries in the region rocked by instability. Anger, the state's inability to end the insecurity, played a major role in 2 military coups in 2022. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the present head of state, has prioritized a strong security response in reclaiming land from the rebel groups. On February 25th, there were several attacks, notably against a military detachment in Tankalo in the east, a rapid response battalion in Kongosi in the north, and soldiers in the northern region of Ohayegoya. In reaction, the army and members of the Volunteers of the Defense of the Fatherland VDP, a civilian force that supports the military, launched operations that were able to neutralize several hundred terrorists, according to security forces. Security Minister Mohamedou Sana at the beginning of the week said the wave of the attacks are coordinated. Now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Now, stories from Nigeria on international relations. Nigeria, Qatar seal deals on education. Others, Nigeria and Qatar have signed historic agreements opening a gateway for using the potential of mutual cooperation in key sectors of education, enterprise development, investment promotion, youth empowerment, mining, tourism, and sports. On Sunday in Doha, President Bola Tinubu and His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar, witnessed the ceremony. Special advisor to the President, Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngalali, in a statement said that before the signing ceremony at the Qatar Presidential Palace, President Tinubu assured his host of Nigeria's readiness to welcome investors into the country, noting the ongoing reforms that favor innovation, return on investment, and multiculturalism. President Tinubu has appointed the coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, as the team leader of the government team that will interface with Qatari authorities in investment identification and implementation moving forward, according to the statement. Additionally, it said during the bilateral deliberations, President Tinubu enabled a brief presentation by the Emir by the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Dele Alake, who spoke in detail about the high grade of numerous minerals, including lithium, immediately derivable across the country, with an emphasis on imminent opportunities for local mineral processing and value additive industry in the sector. The 7 agreements signed are cooperation agreement in the field of education, regulation of employment of workers with the government of Qatar, establishment of a joint business council JBC between the Qatar Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Nigeria Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture NISIMA, in addition to a cooperation agreement in the field of youths and sports. The other agreements are cooperation in the field of tourism and business events and a memorandum of understanding combating illicit trade in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. The documents were signed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, and relevant officials in the government of the State of Qatar, both Thaina bint Ali Al-Jabar Al-Nomi, Minister of Education and Higher Education Dr. Ahmed Hassan Al-Hamadi, Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Sheikh Khalifa bin Jassim Al Thani, Chairman of Qatar Chamber of Commerce and Industry QCCI, and Abdullah bin Khalif bin Hattab Al Kabi, Under Secretary of the Ministry of Interior MOI. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has stressed that Qatar is open to President Tinubu's investment drive, remembering that he journeyed to Nigeria in 2019 owing to his belief that Nigeria is a key and strategic ally on its own and within the context of his role in regional affairs. And finally, on the news on economic and hardship, residents loot FCTA warehouse, cart away food items. The Agricultural and Rural Development Secretariat of the Federal Capital Territory Administration FCTA verified the looting of its warehouse in Dede on Sunday by residents in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja over the economic hardship in the country. Ratifying the incident, Zakari Aliyu, the spokesperson for the ARD Secretariat, said the secretary had earlier visited the warehouse where the residents had pillaged everything in the store and vandalized the place, removing roofs and windows, adding that the FCT Minister of State, Dr. Maria Mahmood, and the FCT Mandate Secretary, Agric Secretariat Lawan Gaidam, will again visit the facility on Monday, where more detailed information will be given regarding the incident. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, meanwhile, in a statement signed by Manzo Ezekiel, the agency did not report that its warehouse in Abuja was looted, while, however, sympathizing with the owners of the affected warehouse. NEMA added that its Director General Mustafa Habib Ahmed had instructed the reinforcement of security at its zonal offices and warehouses nationwide to forestall any security breach at NEMA facilities. Another look at the top stories. Haley wins GOP primary over Trump in DC. South Korea to suspend doctoral licenses amid strike. Australia grants $42 million to ASIN for South China Sea. Haiti imposes curfew after 4,000 inmates flee jail, and Harris urges immediate Gaza ceasefire, rebukes Israel. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Chiraki. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week ahead.